Happy Sunday morning, my friends. Sunday mornings are just kind of different, aren't they? I was like remembering about when I was growing up, we had already been to Mass by this time. My parents, I think we went to 7 o'clock Mass every Sunday. And my parents always really liked to sit in the front. And that was so not me. I'm not like a front kind of girl. I always like to kind of sneak in the back and sit in the back seat. And I was always so uncomfortable in church. But it's Sunday morning and I normally would be talking to my mom. I would call her a lot of times on Sunday mornings. And then during the pandemic, she would say, I'm sorry, I can't talk, because she would watch probably 3 different masses on Sunday mornings on online. She would watch these masses. My mom was a devout Catholic. She was a very, very, very complicated person for me. My mom was a realist. She was raised by nuns. I know this is like a crazy story, but back when my mom was little, my grandmother had gotten a divorce. Like, imagine that, getting a divorce back then. And so in order for my grandmother to support herself and my mother, she had to work. And so she sent my mother to a boarding school. My mother was raised by nuns. She went to a boarding school in a convent, which explains why one of her favorite shows was called The Midwife. I'm just having this memory, not memory, but this weird pop in my head of the fact that a lot of times when I can't sleep, I turn on Call the Midwife. Maybe because it reminds me of my mom. We had such a complicated relationship that there were many years that I did not like her. I'm just going to admit that. I didn't like my mom. She drove me crazy. She was so negative in my mind. She was always looking at the other side of the coin, and I was always so she called me pie in the sky. She said, "You're so pie in the sky. You're so Alice in Wonderland." And I remember walking to middle school thinking, I'm like Alice in Wonderland? Like, what does that even mean? And I never came down from that. I was always in my head, in my dreams, in my future and possibility. My mother was just pulling on me all the time. Come back to reality. So this Sunday morning, I got to get back to the fact that I just never gave up on it. I never gave up on our relationship, and I just kept calling. My mom really didn't call me very often. So if my mom called, I thought something horrible had happened. Somebody's died. Oh my God, when my mother would call. She hardly ever called me. I always called her. But I used to call her, I would talk to her for hours on my travels, because I would travel a lot for work, in my car. And so I would call her and we would talk for hours. Just about nonsense, about nothing, about politics and religion and whatever was going on in the moment. She was my go-to person. Everybody's kind of got one. My mom was my go-to person. And so this Sunday morning, I'm thinking about how I really miss her. I would have been calling her this morning, and I think a lot of times in my life, I still think oh God, I've got to call my mom. I got to call my mom and ask her about this or talk to her about this. And I just miss her. She's talking to me quite a bit from the other side. She's ecstatically happy. She's very happy where she is. And she talks to me actually quite a bit, saying things, that you want your parent to say, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. I'm glad you were my daughter. proud of you. I mean, God, could there be anything better to hear from a parent than that they're proud of you? She had this, I have this really quick story about her that I just think it was just nuts, because I had gone to this retreat over in July of 2021. I went to this retreat and I was going into a healing meditation, and I called her. I had my earphones on and I was walking out, because I did this quite often, where I would kind of leave. I would leave the group and I would just go off on my own, and I would get in the zone, because I wanted to be in the zone when I went into these meditations. And I was walking out and I'm talking to her, and there's somebody in my periphery, some woman is walking like but she can't hear my mother, but she can hear me. And I said, okay, Mom, I'm going to be going into this healing, and I want you to be ready, and I'm going to come back and see if you felt anything, and yada, yada, whatever. And then she says, I'm just worried about my soul. And I said, before I could even skip a beat, I said, Mom, you don't have to worry about your soul for 1 second. And this woman who was walking by me just started laughing. But my mom was quite serious. She was worried about her soul. And just strangely enough, my mother passed away about a month later. And immediately she started talking to me. And she said, you're right. You were right. I'm happy. I'm gloriously happy where I am. My mom is so happy, and I'm happy that she's happy. But honestly, it was such a huge loss for me. I knew that it was going to be hard when she passed away, but I just miss her. I miss being able to make the phone call. I know that I can talk to her anytime, but it's just different when you can't see someone and their physicality. It's just different. It just is. So anyway, to my mom, like one of my best friends, and I don't know, we just got to not take our people for granted ever, not 1 minute. Not 1 minute. Not 1 second. Not 1 second do we ever take our people for granted. Anyway, I love you guys, and I'll be back.